Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Wine Time with Peggy show, featuring Peggy Fiandaca, who along with her winemaker husband Kurt Lawrence Dunham, owns and operates LDV Winery in Arizona. Welcome, everyone. It is time to go to Arizona and then Peru today. This is exciting. It is Wine Time with Peggy time, and Peggy is here from LDV Winery. Peggy Fiandaca, as you know, her and her husband, Kurt, own and run LDV Winery in Arizona. I'm going to say southeast is where the vineyards are, and then up in Scottsdale is where you go tasting, to their tasting room, but also go to one of their events and learn how to do things like make a charcuterie board or even the art of smelling wine, right, Peggy?
Absolutely.
You can pronounce it and I can't.
L'Anes de Vin, the aromas of wine, or I like to call it aromatherapy for winos. But it's a lot of fun.
That's my style. That's my style. Well, I'm excited today because you brought a special guest on the show, Tamara Andersen, who is a blogger, food blogger, and I encourage everyone to go to her website, Beyond Mere Sustenance. And I love that title. I think this is just it's brilliant. It really is. So welcome, Tamara. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I want to just say this. I think you and Peggy, I know you're friends, and obviously food and wine go hand in hand. But what I think is so important about your title of your website, Beyond Mere Sustenance, goes with the fact of wine, and what also they do at LDV Winery is that this is about sitting down and appreciation. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yes.
How did you come up with the name?
Well, I've been cooking since I was a young teenager, doing all kinds of adventuresome things for like proms. We cooked crepes and I did snails for my French class. And I just have always loved being in the kitchen. But more importantly, my parents always made dinner around the table a priority. So we didn't eat out very much. When we did, it was for a special occasion, but we always had a sit-down dinner as a family, and quite often breakfast as well on the weekend. And so when I came up with the name, it's just, I have a little bit on my about page that a lot of people just look at food as a way to fill their bellies and stave their hunger. And I feel like it's the glue that can hold a family together. We've always looked at it that way. We raised our boys that way. All four of our sons are really accomplished cooks. And the youngest is a professional chef, and we all celebrate life together around the table with good food and good drink.
See, there you go. So I like that. That's, it's about taking time out. And Peggy here on, Wine Time with Peggy, you've talked a lot about that. I know you love to cook. Peggy's Italian, y'all. So she's, it's a big deal. There is no slow come in and, take a shot of wine and leave at the tasting room. It's not like,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's about conversation. And this goes even with what's happening in Scottsdale, right? As becoming a blue zone, Peggy.
Absolutely. And it's exciting. A lot of people are getting involved in Blue Zone and changing how they're approaching their lifestyle, which is important. And of course, we hope they're including wine in moderation and enjoying it for the opportunity to bring other people together to the table, not only around food, but also around conversations about wine.
Well, isn't travel part of this? I know we're going to talk about Peru and Peruvian food, but I wanted to ask each of you, has that expanded obviously your palate, right, and learning, but doesn't that also help you slow down and start to really learn? Peggy, I know you've done a lot of traveling and tasting. Wine tasting?
Right, exactly. I think the beauty about food and wine when you're traveling is you learn about the culture and the history of the place when you experience their food and their wine. And if you get an opportunity to visit a vineyard, or if you get an opportunity to go to an orchard or to a farm and really understand that location and their culture around agriculture and food production and how they make food. I always love to take a cooking class everywhere I go. That is, and that really gives you that appreciation for the location you're traveling to.
Oh, that is so cool. So, the cooking class, that's the way to go. Now, did you do any of that in your travels, Tamara? Because it seems that you've done some traveling too.
Well, because we've been so busy with our Peru trips and we go for a month. So we haven't done a lot. Well, my husband has academically, but just, Mexico and all over the US. We've been to every wine region in the US, I think. But I actually, the last couple of years with our students in Peru, I taught a cooking class. We went to they have wonderful like open mercado markets with all the fresh produce, and you can get fish, trucha, trout that was caught that morning, and make ceviche with the wonderful Peruvian peppers. And so I taught them a couple of simple salsas that are real typical in Peru. And they really enjoyed that. That was just the last 2 trips. We made 6 studies abroad trips with our students for a month. So we know Peru pretty well, mostly around the Andes, some in Lima.
That's really cool. And it's interesting because they really do have quality, right? When what they're growing is quality. Taken good care. Yeah.
All local. They don't bring in a lot from, like, they don't import a lot of produce. It's mostly local, done by small farmers.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So speaking of growing, what's going on at the vineyard? We got to hear it.
It's a fun time. Absolutely. Yeah. We've had a good fruit set, and I've talked about in the past, fruit set means where the berries start to develop, and we are able to get a good handle on an anticipated amount of what we're going to be harvesting if all goes well, if the weather stays nice, and that helps us prepare for harvest. So June really gives us a good understanding of what the harvest might look like, even though we're not going to start harvesting until late August into September and October. So yeah, it's a fun month. The vineyard looks absolutely incredible. We did some nutrient work with the soils, and they're growing like crazy, and so it's constantly out there training those vines to grow properly and build that nice canopy that we want on each of the vines. The babies are doing really well. Yep, they're doing really well. Our consultant that we work with that checks on our soils and checks on the vineyard said it has never looked better. So we're excited. Yeah.
Well, this is interesting because I know through the winter and through to now, you've had interesting weather. Right. Arizona's going through fires as well. So it's kind of interesting. So some of that may make some really extreme wine.
Right. Well, it's been a dry winter for us, and what that means is just more expensive. We just have to water more to keep the vines hydrated and so on, and keep those roots stimulated. But it's been good. It's still, not horribly hot in Arizona. We've had a really nice spring, I think. Anytime it doesn't get above 100, I'm happy. And we haven't had consistent days above 100 quite yet. I mean, they're June, they start, so we're preparing, but the vineyard's not that hot, so that's great.
Yeah, because you're in such a cool location. Right. It's, with all the volcanic soil, the mountains, and yeah, I mean, I remember hiking in Chiricahua National Monument in June. It can get hot. It can.
Right.
But you got grottos and things,
It can. Tamara's knows. She's been to the vineyard several times and camped
there a few times.
You went camping? Oh, cool. Well, also, you were in Las Cruces, right? You lived in Las Cruces for a while, which is
2 years.
It's neat out there because that's all all the wonderful chilies and Hatch chili peppers. And we just drove through Hatch, New Mexico. Oh my gosh, I don't know anymore. We've just traveled full time. So it was pretty recent though. It was a few months ago. Let's put it that way. And it's just so fun to see. It's a fun little town that celebrates the chili peppers. And I know that like parts of Colorado try to, have a war with them, but see, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not, no.
Well, that's it. It's a hard no. Okay. So how do the peppers in Peru compare to the peppers in the Southwest?
There's a wide variety, starting with the most ubiquitous one is the ají amarillo pepper, and it's a long, very yellow or orange pepper that's kind of similar in shape to a hatch chili pepper, but it tastes really different. They call it the sunshine pepper. It's got fruity heat, and I would say it's probably moderately hot. They've got ricotta peppers, which, don't be fooled, they look like a small bell pepper. Oh my gosh, they're hot. And you'll find those in ceviche, and you'll find them in ricottos rellenos, which is a stuffed ricotta. We can get those here. It's referred to as a manzano pepper, and they grow them in Mexico, and we get a lot of our produce here in South Texas from Mexico. So, but
Okay.
it's genetically the same as the ricotta pepper. And then they've got a couple of other ones. They've got little tiny, they're about the size of a grape. And they're also very hot. Those grow in the Amazonas region. So yeah, they have a wide variety from all the way from the Andean peppers to the Amazon basin.
So, I mean, that's part of these pairings, right, Peggy, is knowing the heat, not just the spice, but actually the heat level too, right, when you're pairing wine?
Absolutely. It's all about balance, as I've always talked about. And if you really need to know not only the heat, but also the sweetness of that chili or whatever you're pairing it with will be important. When I did my research, because I've not been to Peru, it's kind of on the bucket list of places to go. I know. I was surprised how much agriculture they really did have in Peru, and how much of a coastline that they have. And which is amazing how it seemed where the wine regions were very similar to Arizona, southern Arizona.
Very dry.
Very dry, very desert-like, but they had a lot more sand dune kind of environment than what we have here in Arizona. But I saw a lot of similarities, I think, between the wine regions in Peru and where we are. Which was kind of fun.
Well, now your word of the month, because Peggy always does a word of the month, a wine of the month, and so your word of the month though lends towards a place, but then it's kind of a liqueur, kind of spirity, liqueur-y thing. And I'm now going, if you've got that same kind of sense of place, I'm thinking you may be opening a new company. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, Pisco. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, Tamara.
Exactly right.
Is that correct?
Pisco.
Which I found kind of interesting. It's something that they make. It's a spirit. It's a brandy, a Peruvian brandy. But what was interesting to me about this product, I guess it's produced not only in Peru, but also in Chile they produce it, but they use their flagship grape, which is, I might mispronounce this, Quebranta. Yeah, which is grown quite a lot, but mostly for the production of pisco. And it's a fermented, they distill fermented grape juice, which I thought was interesting, into the spirit. And they've been doing this, since 16th century, making pisco. And they don't use, I know I've talked about cake, the pumice that we kind of call a cake. That's the product of all the skins and the seeds from the pressing process. Well, they do not use that pumice in the making of this process. It is clear juice that they make the brandy out of. And and they do a interesting pisco sour cocktail I read about, which sounded actually pretty good, where they use this pisco brandy, which also I found interesting is that they're required to age that brandy for at least 3 months, and they use vessels like glass, stainless steel, or other copper, but not in anything that's porous to age it.
Can I add an interesting detail? I'm a little biased, of course. Chilean pisco doesn't have all of the rules that Peruvian pisco has. They can cut it with water, distill it to a higher proof, and add water. They can put it in wood. The first time I was able to find pisco here, it was Chilean pisco, and I hadn't had it before. And it's like, ew. I'm sure there are good ones too. But if you really want to get a good pisco, it needs to be a Peruvian pisco. They really are lovely. On the pisco sours, my favorite one is a maracuya sour, which is a passion fruit sour. And it's made with passion fruit juice, egg white, of course, a little bit of juice, and then pisco. and they're
Right.
always garnished with aromatic bitters. So
Right.
yes, they're quite lovely.
Ooh, so Peggy, brandy in the future at LDV Winery?
I don't think so,
I
but
know, I'm just, messing with you,
but
but
actually, we do have several of wineries in Arizona that are distilling the
Oh,
grapes and,
really?
yeah, making brandy and whiskey and tequilas here. So is some diversification happening, but
hmm.
no, not at LDV. I don't think we're going to go that route. We're too old to start
Oh,
something new.
well, number one, you've got one of the best wineries in the planet,
Oh,
right?
I miss you guys' wine so much.
I know
You're
it's
so
not just
sweet.
me. I know it's not just me and Nancy. We love the wines, and it's like I
Oh,
always just go back to the first
yes.
time we had Peggy's wine, and we were at somebody's house with dinner, and I went to open the wine, and then I kind of looked at the people, and I'm like, if you don't drink wine, just kind of like, I'm going, please just don't drink it anymore. Like in the back of my brain, I was just like, please don't have any more. Please don't.
Oh, how
This is
funny.
terrible. But because I
Uh,
was just like, I want this wine. I want to take it to my room and just go away, because we were staying there the night. And I just like, please, if you don't like wine, don't drink this. Because some people are like, oh, I'm not much of a wine drinker, but I'll go, well, why don't you try taste this and see what you think, to see
right.
what's that, because I'm kind of a pusher that way. But then I'm like, if you don't like wine, though, then I'm like, as I'm tasting this, I'm looking and I'd poured people wine and I'm like, oh, please don't ask for a second because this is too good
Right.
to share. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Oh, you
Please say
guys are so
that.
sweet. Thank
But
you.
it's true about your wine, and I think that goes back to exactly what we were saying. It's not mere sustenance. It's not just here, throw some wine back at the end of the day because you're stressed out at work. This is, well, you could definitely share a bottle of LDV and feel wonderful, but slow down, savor. Slow
Hmm.
down and savor, and that's part of stress reduction is savoring. You meant
Absolutely.
it is. And Tamara, you were mentioning passion fruit, which is between mango and passion fruit, like they are to me the best fruits on the planet. And I grew up eating passion fruit just out my backyard, which was very lucky. Oh yeah, everywhere, and mangoes and avocados, and it was gorgeous. But I had Peruvian food in Oregon. I don't know, Peggy, if I
Oh,
told you
wow.
about this. Oh, in Portland. And this meal there's been a few real meals that just sit with you for the rest of your life and you wish you could.
Mm-hmm.
One was in Mexico. I'm still chasing the mole and I'll never find it again. I know. But this Peruvian meal, there's a Peruvian restaurant. We were doing a podcast at a gardening expo and we all went out with the garden people and they're cool because they were doing a pink lemonade blueberry. They created the hybrid of this. So we were getting all to the science of creating hybrid blueberries and then they do their own thing cocktail wise and whatever and baked cakes with them and even when we went to see them. But anyway, we're at this expo and we all went to dinner at this Peruvian restaurant and they had a martini that had passion fruit and some kind of pepper. And I kept telling people it was like habanero or something, but it wasn't habanero. It was something else. And it I would kill for one of those. I wouldn't really kill anything, but then their meal had this avocado thing, and when people mess with avocado too much, I get weird about it because just it's a pure thing. And I think it was like orzo or something, not orzo, quinoa or something. I have to
It
tell you, it is one of the
was.
best meals I've ever had in my life with this
Wow.
avocado, but this martini cocktail, martini-ish, with this spice and the sweet.
It was
And
like
then
Rocoto pepper,
it was
I think.
so good. And I think I may have had a second because they had music playing. And then I was like, well, this is fun. So
Yeah.
these kind of pairings, does that kind of give that flavor of what happens in Peruvian food where you can infuse like sweet, but it's not so overly sweet with these kind of spices?
There's a place in Cusco that we head to as soon as we get to Cusco called the Museo del Pisco. And their entire bar is like, I would say 200 big jars of infused piscos. And
Oh,
they do
wow.
them with all the peppers. They do them with like the local fruits. The one I loved, I forget the Peruvian name, but it was fig. And they'll make, if you say you like something that's spicy and just a little bit sweet, they'll just make up cocktails for you with their infused piscos, and it's super fun. And I just love to go hang out there because it's just like cooking when they do their bar, just like if they were cooking with combining different flavors and in a really expert way.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Pisco is made from one of the only indigenous variety of grapes, the Cupuante grape, and I found that very fascinating. And again, something I admired about Peru and their wine growing regions is to really find what works best and and they honor it and making this Pisco out of it. But it's a medium-sized sweet grape, which was interesting, and it grows primarily along the southern coastal area of Peru, and
it's very dry. It's very dry.
Very dry, and it really loves that dry heat of the day or the sun intensity. Again, very similar to Arizona, and very small. I'm thinking it's similar to our Petite Syrah, very small growing grape, or to a medium-sized grape. It has this reddish violet color on the grape, and sometimes it can be yellow and green, which I found very interesting also. And it has the aromas of and flavors of hints of hay and banana, and passion fruit was one of the descriptors of the aroma and flavor of the Cupuante. But it grows really well. They have like salinity. It's tolerant to salinity and drought resistant, and phylloxera, which is a real dangerous, impacts grapes all over the world. And so it does really well. And that's what they make this Pisco out of, which is kind of fun.
Cool. So when we look at pairing like pisco or wine with the food, that's something we should really delve into, because they've got the spice, you've got this wonderful other grape, and I think we forget. I always think of brandy and apples for some reason, Peggy. I don't know. You kind of reminded me that it's grapes too.
Yeah.
Because they used to make brandy apple.
Of course. Yeah. It's still being made. Absolutely.
More hooch? Is it more of a hooch thing? Oh, okay. Oopsie. I went hoochie mama on y'all.
That's okay. But yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to hear a little bit more from Tamara about the foods and she has some great recipes, but the foods that you experience in Peru, and maybe we can talk about a little bit how to pair with them.
That'd be great. I would say the most typical protein in Peru when we're there, aside from the fish, is wonderful. The fish is really, really good. But alpaca, and that troubles some people, but they indigenous people, there's alpaca everywhere, and so it's very lean and very nutritious and a little bit sweet. And the best replacement for I have found, because part of the focus of my blog is we can't get everything here in the US that you can get in Peru. And so what I want to do is bring Peruvian flavors to non-Peruvians. So I use elk is great. If you've had elk, is similar. And I've discovered bison. So I really like free range grass-fed bison for when I'm cooking Peruvian food that would have alpaca. And of course they do beef and a lot of turkey and chicken as well. But the biggest part of it to me is just incorporating the Peruvian peppers and the fresh produce. That Peruvian causa is a potato-based, it's a mashed potato with ají amarillo peppers, so flavorful. So you mash the potatoes and then they layer different fillings in them. And one of them is palta avocado. They have the best avocados in the world. They're like, we have a photo of one of our students holding one up to her head, and it's the same size as her head.
Oh my.
And they're creamy, and they don't pick them early for transport. You just have them in Peru. So they're tree ripe and they're just amazing. And so you can get these causa with like fresh fish, with avocado, all kinds of different fillings. And that's very much, you'll find that in the humblest restaurant and in the world-class restaurants. They've got, I don't know how many top 5 world renowned chefs in Peru now. And we've been at, if you've heard of Virgilio Martinez, we've been to one of his restaurants in the Peruvian Andes at about 11,000 feet elevation. And they do all indigenous. He does a lot of really unique things with the community. and it strengthens the economy of the indigenous community that the restaurant is in. It's super interesting. We did on one of our anniversaries. We've had a lot of anniversaries there. Anniversary dinner at Meal is the name of it, MIL. And he toured the potatoes. We've got like 4,000 varieties of potatoes, tubers, root vegetables.
Wow.
And they're every color and every shape. We take the students up to, agriculture is a big thing when we take studies abroad trips. So we go to an indigenous community, Quechua, the Quechua people, very high in the Peruvian Andes. And they do Pachamanca is the name. It's a traditional feast. And the students get to help with agriculture. And so they dig potatoes and fava beans. And it's just an amazing experience for them because they get more connected with the ground and where their food actually comes from. And because a lot of people just think food comes from the grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hope that wasn't more answer than you wanted.
I just want to ask, who are the students? Who are the students you're talking about? Yeah.
My husband is retiring as the dean of the Honors College at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And he and his associate dean have taken many trips to Peru with it on honor studies abroad program. And so he teaches a course on alpine ecosystems of the Peruvian Andes. And his colleague teaches, he's an art historian with background in pre-Columbian people. So he has more of the archaeology perspective, and Mark teaches the biology part. And so just we tour a sustainable coffee plantation in the tropics, and we see the potatoes at 13,000 feet, and the students are just really impacted by that. It's really a wonderful program.
That's fantastic that you're taking students up there for these kinds of, it's an immersive way of being, right? So that's part of learning about the food. And then I'm listening to all these flavors and different ingredients. So the avocado was a thing from what I had. And yeah.
Very much a part of Peruvian cuisine.
Okay, so we want to get into some of those ingredients that you were talking about, like the avocados, like what I had that experience with. So when we look at your recipes, you have a wonderful recipe for pasta and also one that you use for meatballs. And everyone, that is linked in the episode notes. And then we're going to kind of talk about those, the ingredients, and see what, Peggy's going to talk about in regards to pairing wine with that, because she's also got a wine that's coming. She does her wine of the month. So we talked brandy, and now we'll go to wine and see how this all works out. So Tamara, tell us about those ingredients and those recipes.
The pasta is called pasta a la huancaína, and it is based on Peruvian huancaína sauce, Peruvian yellow sauce, and it's pepper, which I mentioned that most of the recipes have some sort of Peruvian pepper. It's the ají amarillo chili, and we make that with ají amarillo paste, which is quite available in the U.S. If you can't get it in your Latin foods market, you can order it on Amazon, or there's a couple of U.S.-based Peruvian suppliers that you can order it from now. And it's really very simple. It's the huancaína sauce is a creamy sauce with yellow peppers and queso fresco. So then to make the pasta a la huancaína, you start with the base of the huancaína sauce and you finish it with butter and Parmesan. And it gets sprinkled with herbs. In Peru, it's probably going to be cilantro, it could be parsley or whatever. And then the meatballs, actually, it's a paired recipe. I had that in a restaurant. There's a picture of it for the pasta dish. And they were alpaca meatballs stuffed with queso andino, which is a fresh cheese that they make in the Andes Mountains. So I created those at home to pair with the pasta. Of course, if you're a vegetarian or whatever, you can have just the pasta, but it's really lovely with the meatballs, and they've got this little bit when you bite into them of melty cheese. So, and I use the ground bison in that. You could certainly use, whatever your preferred ground meat is, but it also has some finely minced, I use the ají amarillo pepper and a lot of cilantro in the meatball mix. Cilantro is pretty much in everything in Peru. So I can get the ají amarillo peppers at our local Latino foods market frozen, and did we lose Peggy? They work actually quite well. And so that's, plate the pastel huancaína and then top it with the meatballs and sprinkle it all with a little bit more Parmesan and fresh herbs. And it's really lovely. And it's pretty easy to make. So I was really happy to see the recipe do so well. It ranks really well in Google search.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really simple and it's very Peruvian. So it's probably a good introduction to somebody that wants to experiment, because you can very easily get the ají amarillo paste.
What is the cheese is it, when you're talking about the alpaca being sweet, is the cheese that's inside the meatballs, what is that, kind of creamy, or is it spicy?
It's a fresh cheese, so it would be a lot like mozzarella if you're used to using the fresh mozzarella balls. In fact, I found that it was super easy to form the meatballs. I get the little, like the pearl mozzarella balls, fresh mozzarella balls that come in a tub with water. And that's just about the right size. You don't have to chop it all up. And then I just wrap the meatball mixture around the little mozzarella ball. And it works really well. And it just kind of oozes out of there when you cut into it. It's quite lovely.
So we've got to go from all this deliciousness over to Peggy to balance this wonderful meal with wonderful wine. So Peggy, what you got for us?
Again, it sounds like a wonderful, I'm definitely going to try this meal. And I'm guessing I would go to a medium-bodied red, to maybe a lighter one of our petite syrahs, maybe, which that is not heavily oaked, potentially, like our Sky Island petite syrah. Would you agree? Good. Yeah, I think it can stand up to the peppers and the cheeses of that dish and the richness of the bison or whatever you use for the meatballs. I think a petite syrah would be great, or a syrah might be wonderful with that. And if you don't have those, then maybe a Sangiovese maybe, or a Barbera even. I think you'd have to watch the oakiness of whatever wine you choose. I'd go with a lighter oak or an unoaked wine. Would you put, Tamara, I'm curious, would you put it with any kind of a white wine?
I would, again, avoid oak. I would love a really buttery vanilla bomb Chardonnay, but I would not.
Okay.
When we're there, I'm pickier about red wines than I am white wines, especially if I can't have your petite syrah. But I find a Malbec rosé is good, or Tarantas, which is interesting because one of the varieties of pisco grapes that's real popular there for the aromatic piscos is the Tarantel. And it sounds similar. It is similar. They're real close cousins or whatever. Genetically, it's never oaked. I've never had it oaked, but it goes really well with spicy food if you like. I would say a little minerally maybe, but more citrusy. So I think it pairs really well. That's what I had with it. Whenever I've had pasta alla huancaína, I've had a Tarantas or maybe a Chilean Sauvignon Blanc.
Right. So it could possibly go with our Viognier.
I was going to say, I think it would go well with your Viognier.
Yeah.
A oaked one, right?
Right. We do a Sky Island Viognier, which is unoaked and all aged on stainless steel. So that would go really nicely because it has the characteristics of a Sauvignon Blanc, that crisp fruit flavor. That grape that you talked about, I guess, is widely grown in Peru, and it is very aromatic, and it creates that crispness in the wine, which is nice.
We did a Pisco class on one of our trips that was so interesting because before that we didn't know the differences in between the non-aromatic and the aromatic varieties. And for sipping, the aromatic ones can be super interesting. And the Tarantel is a really nice sipping pisco.
Right.
So when you're there, are people doing what Peggy does and Kurt does at the tasting room? They create all these, you can go in and have a wine tasting, but they're doing all these events to not only, provide fun and entertainment, but to teach, which is a really cool way. So do they do that in Peru too? Yes. Because I'm wondering, I can't wait to see the reactions of audience to hear we're doing Peruvian foods with wine pairings. This is you don't see this very often. So that's what I was wondering, if you see that kind of thing happen over there. That's their norm.
Absolutely. Peru, we've yet to find a good wine there, but education is very much part of the process, both for the Pisco, the Museo del Pisco that I talked about. They do all kinds of different classes, and they're super interesting and very knowledgeable. Also, we've gone to a couple of distilleries, Ollantaytambo, which is kind of where you get the train if you're going to Machu Picchu. They have a wonderful distillery there. And we did a class at the distillery too. And so I feel like they're really working at educating people to what they have to offer, both with food and with grapes and distilled spirits and all of the other things. And it's one thing we really have enjoyed about going there, because it really is an immersive experience.
And tourism is an important part of their economy, as well as agriculture is a very critical part of the economy.
That's pretty much it there, I want to say. So they were really hurt during the pandemic, but they've come back pretty well. They really have come back pretty well. So highly recommend.
I know. And the first step you can take is by starting to cook them. So everyone, check out the recipes and also go to ldvwinery.com. Any good events happening in June, Peggy, at the tasting room?
We do. We have a fun, it's National Selfie Day on June 21st, and we are having a selfie day wine scavenger hunt. So I know it. So everyone who signs up, you know, we have a list of things that they have to go take selfies at and post to social media, and we have prizes. So it should be a lot of fun. We've not done that in the past, and then we're doing a wine maker dinner in June where we're going to do a demonstration of risottos, 2 different kinds of risottos, and we're doing a pairing, 5-course pairing, light bites. They're not a full meal courses, but light bites paired with wine to celebrate the beginning of summer. So
Nice.
yeah, we have, so in addition to charcuterie and wine and cheese and all the things that we do on a regular basis, we have those unique events coming up.
Awesome. Awesome. So everyone, ldvwinery.com. If you go to Scottsdale, yes, it's getting a little warm in June, but they have swimming pools. They have wonderful sunrise and sunset hiking and golf and all kinds of good things. But most importantly, you got wine. So go check it out. Go to downtown Scottsdale. They've got museums, art galleries, art museums to experience. And again, you can go to Tamara's blog as well and get some cooking going on. So beyond Mere Sustenance.com. The links to her recipes are in the episode notes. Thank you, ladies. It has been fun. So salute to you both. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Wine Time with Peggy show. Keep up with LDV Winery at ldvwinery.com. Keep up with Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com.